Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic was hard to watch. It was very, very difficult, and not because I was going to win $100,000 if that fight had gone to decision. That stinks. I was already fantasizing about all the stuff I was going to buy. I was going to get a jet ski. I was going to put money away for the future. I was going to get a bunch of drugs and hire a bunch of women workers, maybe even invest a little bit, buy some Bitcoin, buy some stocks, all the normal stuff. And as you can tell, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still devastated, but no, that's not why. That's not why it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch because, look, Stipe Miocic, I want to be nice here. He's a legend. He is one of the GOATs of the sport. He truly is a very, very special individual when you look at his MMA career as a whole. But if I had to describe his performance in a very fair, reasonable, concise way, I would say he resembled that of an old plow horse that needed to be put down via shotgun blast behind the barn. Yeah, as crazy as this sounds, I think Stipe's performance against Jon Jones made Holly Holm's last few performances look like she was young and full of youth and energy, and that's saying something, truly. But, funny enough, it seems like a large portion of the population is actually very impressed by Jon Jones's performance. They thought that he looked really, really good. And, I didn't think that personally. I don't think he looked bad, but I think he looked like he always has. I don't think we've ever seen Jon Jones not in his prime. I don't recall any performance that was clearly like, oh yeah, no, he lost a step. Oh, that's not the same Jon Jones. I truly don't think that. I think that, anytime he has struggled in a fight, I do think it comes down to either his opponent's style and his game plan for them. I think when you look at the Gustafsson 1 fight and the Dominic Reyes fight, you're going to see Jon approached both of those fights with a very similar game plan, and both Reyes and Gustafsson have a lot of similarities to their game. They're both tall, they're both quick, boxing heavy fighters, and I think that, because of Jon's game plan for both of those fights, he struggled. Jon, with both of them, was trying to get in their face and he was trying to pressure them, and because both Gus and Reyes had a speed and a boxing advantage, they would be moving on the outside, lunging in with combinations, landing, and then moving away again. You look at the Gustafsson 2 fight, and that fight was very, very different. Now, some people will tell you, well, Jon Jones was on steroids for that fight. I would tell you, Jon Jones has always been on steroids. Why would you stop taking steroids at any point in your fighting career? You know what I mean? Like, why would you? That doesn't make any sense. Jon has always been on steroids. But his game plan, objectively, was completely different in the Gus 2 fight. He was staying away from Gustafsson. He was not pressuring like he did in the first fight or the Reyes fight. He was the one on his bike, moving, spamming kicks, and shooting takedowns every single time Gustafsson stepped in with punches. And again, he dominated that fight, and he had a completely different game plan. So, look, in my mind, right, Stipe Miocic, just honestly, I did not see any reality where he pulls this off, apart from maybe he just happens to land a single clean shot that hurts Jon Jones, right? That was kind of the one Hail Mary. But apart from that, just you look at this fight style for style, Jon Jones has every single physical advantage except the pure boxing, which would mean that Jon Jones has a lot of places he can keep this fight to avoid boxing with Stipe. And, that's what we saw. Stipe Miocic just frankly has such a limited skill set against Jon. He had zero ability to defend the teeps. Zero ability. And, what really doesn't help in terms of defending, for one, body shots, but for two, really any strike, is just how flat-footed he was. He was the opposite of quick. He was not light on his feet at all. He was not moving. He was such a stationary target. And that is just going to really open up the teeps, really open up the spinning back kicks, which, that was an issue. But even aside from all of that, Stipe actually did land some very decent shots against Jon Jones, because Jon Jones is not a great defensive boxer. He's just not good. There were moments in this Stipe fight that was shocking. Right? Like this moment right here, Stipe is moving in with punches, and Jon Jones extends both of his arms completely out and is leaning back with his chin up in the air. This is literally shocking. This is shocking. This is probably the worst boxing defense you could physically have. Look, if Stipe's arm was just an inch longer, he's catching Jon Jones here with his chin up in the air and zero guard. And of course, there were just so many moments where Jon's defense was so lackadaisical. Like, he just wasn't moving, you know what I mean? He was standing right in front of Stipe. He just wasn't getting away from him, and he was leaving himself open to get hit. And I mean, he did the exact same thing against Dominic Reyes a number of times, so this is nothing new. It is nothing new, but God, just the fact that Stipe had zero pop on any of his punches is so absurd to me. I mean, look, they say power is the last thing to go as you age. Well, for Stipe, it's fucking gone, all right? He's lost all of it. And it's just so absurd to me that Dana White was pushing so hard that this fight had to happen still. Because, man, there was no point. There was no point. There was no point. Stipe Miocic was in no shape to fight, and he should not have gotten approved by any athletic commission. And it was just, we learned essentially nothing new from this fight, right? Nothing new. There was no point in this fight having to happen. But regardless, what surprised me a wee little itty bitty bit was the fact that Jon Jones said in his post-fight interview that he might give the people what they want, which is Tom Aspinall. Of course, though, then he immediately after is now trying to price himself out of that fight. So, I mean, look, I don't think anything has really changed on that front. But what if I told you Jon Jones legitimately has the style to beat somebody like Tom Aspinall? What if I told you that Jon Jones has the skills to, on paper, beat somebody with the skills of Tom Aspinall? Would you believe me? Because it's true, but regardless of that, regardless of style, regardless of skills, there is one reason why Jon Jones can never beat Tom Aspinall. There's a reason why he really doesn't want the fight. There's one particular reason. When you look throughout Tom Aspinall's entire career, obviously you're going to note that he is so insanely fast. He's so light on his feet. He glides around the octagon. His hand speed is insane. But Tom Aspinall, there's a few possible deficiencies to his game. One of which being he is so overpowered offensively that sometimes he doesn't really worry about defense super frequently. I mean, you're going to find a lot of moments of him staying in the pocket just a little too long because he trusts his power and his speed that much, and it leads him to get tagged. Of course, though, Jon Jones is not the kind of guy that's going to capitalize on this. In fact, I don't really know who would be the person to do it, because the problem is your timing has to be precise. You have to be ready to sit down on your shot, put all your body weight behind it, and catch Tom clean. And the problem is, you make a little mistake there, you are getting knocked out because Tom is way faster than you, and he has real one-punch knockout power. But regardless, look, if you're Jon Jones, you're going to be looking to do two things against Tom Aspinall, which is kind of do what you did against Gustafsson in the second fight. You want to stay on the outside, you want to keep your hands up, you want to be constantly moving away and spamming kicks to the body. We've talked about this with Ilia Topuria recently, that something that he does that is so difficult to deal with is the fact that he is able to protect his head and his body all at the same time with his guard because of the length of his arms in proportion to the length of his torso. Volkanovski, for example, can't do this, and that is why Islam set up a head kick so cleanly from attacking his body. Well, Tom Aspinall, he also can't do this. His arms are way too short and his torso is way too long. He has to choose between defending his body or defending his head. And you look at the Volkov fight, there were two instances where Volkov attacked his body with kicks, and Tom Aspinall didn't even make an attempt to defend it. Now again, this is almost never a problem for Tom because he knocks everybody out so fast. But on paper, you would say Jon Jones, right, at kicking range is arguably maybe one of the best in the sport. If he just keeps both of his hands up, stays away, is constantly moving and just ripping kicks to the body like he did against Stipe, he in theory could have success. And of course, just like in the Gus 2 fight, every time Tom commits to a shot, just try to duck right underneath it and get deep on takedowns or clinch. Jon Jones is so good in the clinch, and of course, as we know, he is an insanely high-level grappler. All right, on paper, honestly, this works out amazing. Of course, Tom Aspinall is always going to have a massive amount of risk. You cannot get hit clean by him, and that is why Jones needs to be ultra careful every single moment Tom is throwing punches. But here's the thing. as I alluded to earlier, the reason why, frankly, none of this matters is because of one simple thing. Jon Jones is not a heavyweight. He's not a natural heavyweight at all. You know who is a natural heavyweight? Francis Ngannou, Tom Aspinall. Both of these guys are at their best naturally, physically, weighing plus 255 pounds. Okay? But the time that we saw Jon Jones bulk up to 250, he was fucking fat. He was fucking fat, okay? He was big and slow. And look, in terms of just pure grappling, like we saw in the Cyril Gane fight, being that big is great, but he can't be that slow and that bulky against Tom Aspinall. He can't do it. But the problem is, at 235 pounds, he is going to be at such a disadvantage strength-wise. His power is not going to be the same, and his chin is going to be way worse giving up that kind of size against Tom Aspinall. And this is something you just can't get around. So power just went out in my house, so I will now be finishing this video using candlelight. But look, is Jon Jones a better grappler than Tom Aspinall? It's almost impossible to be certain about that. I mean, look, Tom's background is jiu-jitsu. He started as a child. I think we can probably definitively say that Jon is a better wrestler. He has better pure takedowns. But look, none of this matters if Jon Jones is giving up 30 pounds. It's going to make it that much more difficult to complete takedowns. It's going to make it that much more difficult to actually hold Tom down. I mean, again, look, we've rarely ever seen somebody threaten takedowns on Tom Aspinall. Spivak had a decent shot, got down to Aspinall's hips, but Aspinall was so quick to the sprawl, good whizzer, and defended the takedown beautifully, right? And then immediately made him pay by knocking him out with a short elbow in the clinch. I think there's a mixture here of Jon knows he's going to be giving up size, while at the same time, just there not being a lot of film study on Tom. There's so many unanswered questions, and that's the big issue here. You know, again, every single time somebody fights, you learn more about them. You understand their game just that much better. But, I mean, again, look at Tom Aspinall's record. He finishes almost every single fight round one because he is that overpowered offensively that, there are just going to be questions going into this fight that Jon doesn't know, and Jon doesn't want to risk his legacy on that while at the same time giving up that much size. And that's why, to me, look, on paper, I think you can make a really good argument for how Jon, in theory, could pose issues to Tom Aspinall, but Jon fights his best as a 205er. That is just who he is. That is where he fights the best. He naturally competes at his fullest potential at around 230 pounds. That makes him a 205er. Whereas Tom Aspinall competes his natural best at around 250 pounds. That makes him a heavyweight. And no matter how you want to spin it, no matter what advantages or game plan decisions Jon Jones might be able to make, you're never going to get around that issue for Jon Jones. And that is why Jon Jones does not want to fight Tom Aspinall.